Good morning, everybody. My name is Lloyd Diamond, and I am the CEO of Pixium Vision. We are a late clinical stage company using our patented machine-brain interface technology called Prima to restore vision to those who have lost their sight. And our primary target, our first target, is dry age-related macular degeneration, which is a disease today that has no solution or treatment. Just a quick note about our forward-looking statement. We are a publicly traded company, in fact, on Euronext in Paris. And our market cap as of September was 24 million euros. So those of you that have had a chance to listen to the panel discussion this morning, I think I mentioned the term, we're sort of in Neverland. We're one of the pre-commercial medical device companies that has listed on Euronext in Paris with all its interesting challenges. However, we are focused on applying proprietary algorithms and artificial intelligence in ophthalmology, and we've already validated our proof of concept in dry AMD, which is a market that we estimate is roughly 1.5 billion, and as I mentioned previously, there's currently no therapeutic option. We've done initial clinical work in which we've actually demonstrated that we've met our safety and primary efficacy endpoints, and I'll touch on that a little bit later in the presentation. And therefore, in fact, the Prima System, our platform, can become the first therapeutic option in dry AMD with a very large market potential. In our development steps, we are going to begin our Primavera pivotal study in dry AMD, and that's to be initiated in the first half of 2020 with a readout in late 2022. And we're beginning our US early feasibility work in the next month or so. A word about age-related macular degeneration. It's a neurodegenerative disease. It's a very large disease. It's probably the largest retinal neurodegenerative disease that there is. There are two types. There's a wet form and a dry form. The wet form actually only represents about 20% of the patient population. The dry form is the majority. And interestingly enough, in the wet form, there are drugs today that are used to slow down the progression of the disease. These are anti-VEGF drugs such as Lucentis. And that drug class today represents about a $10 billion market. The dry form, which is the more prevalent form, has absolutely no treatment today. There have been, I think, 60 some odd clinical trials, especially in the drug area. There have been trials in gene therapy, in stem cells, and vitamin A treatment, and all have either come short in phase 1 or phase 2 of their trial. So we really are at the forefront of the dry AMD disease treatment paradigm. We know that progressive loss of visual acuity in AMD patients leads to a dramatic loss in quality of life. And in fact, there are publications that have shown that the loss of quality of life for dry AMD patients is equal to those that are undergoing dialysis, advanced prostate cancer, or severe stroke. And so for this patient population, actually, in the AMD patient, the goal that we have is to restore some level of independence and quality of life, which then would technically translate to a positive impact in quality of life outcome. Again, these patients tend to be older in nature, and so as they become more dependent, they become less active, and as they become less active, we know that there are other diseases that tend to set in. So we're trying to give them back some level of independence. A word that I would maybe state here on this slide for one more moment. We've had our first generation technology called Prima 1, which you can see there on the right side of the screen. That consisted of some opaque glasses and an image processing system, as well as the implant, which I'll discuss in just a moment, which is what we implant in the retinal space. In that first generation technology, we actually outfitted the patients with opaque glasses. So in a way, we penalize them because in that patient population in AMD, they actually lose central vision first and they maintain some peripheral vision. We put dark glasses on the patients because in our clinical study work, we needed to prove that whatever sight restoration we were providing we could attribute to the implantation and not their residual vision that they maintain. So actually, we had some improvement in visual acuity, and I'll talk about that, but not enough to really move the needle to where we could see an accelerated outcome as far as quality of life improvement. We now have a second generation of that technology, which is improved algorithms, transparent glasses, which will allow the patient to use their peripheral residual vision as well as the bionic vision we create, which should theoretically correspond to better visual acuity and therefore even a greater improvement in quality of life outcome. So the market is quite large. I mentioned most market estimates show about 40 million patients at prevalence at any one time in the AMD space. However, we're targeting those that are advanced stage, meaning in Europe and the US, if you look at advanced stage, there are those that have lost central visual acuity, so they are completely blind centrally, even though they may maintain some residual vision. And that's a market that's anywhere between 2 to 4 million people in the US and Europe, of which 350 to 500,000 actually are late stage, so they're legally blind and they have a visual acuity of 2400 or less. Just to put it in context, normal vision is 20/20. So these patients cannot see faces, cannot drive, they're considered legally blind. However, within that patient population, 170,000 of them have no foveal perception whatsoever. So they can't see light centrally, they can't see anything. And within that patient population, only 70% actually seek medical care because, as I mentioned, there's no option for these patients. So many AMD patients go visit the ophthalmologist, they're told we can't help you, and they just go home and they learn to live with their disease. As it's an older patient population, we then look at those that have good cognitive function and that are able to undergo a minor surgery, and so we target the patient population of 15,000 patients in the US and in Europe. As well as the fact that there had been previous generation of retinal implant that actually have received reimbursement, and I can touch on competition in a few minutes, but within that first class of implants, which actually targeted a different retinal disease state, reimbursement in US and Europe was between $100,000 and $150,000 and euros. Targeting younger patient population, we target an older patient population, so our initial health economic outcome measures show probably a target price of between $70,000 to $80,000 or euros, which then gives us the potential market of 1.5 billion. The company works closely with the top universities and vision clinics in the US and Europe. We have an exclusive worldwide license for the implant from Stanford University, so the implant was developed there. We have a right globally for all applications and indications for the specific implant class. So what is Prima? It is actually two communicating components. There's a visualization and imaging analysis system, which you see on the left, comprised of clear glasses, a video processor, and then the pocket computer. And as well as on the right, a wireless subretinal implant, which I like to compare to a solar panel. So it's actually an implant that we put subretinally. It is not activated until we actually aim light on it to turn it on. And when light is not being targeted at the implant, it virtually remains dormant. The mechanism of action is simple. I mean, simple to explain, maybe not simple in comprehension, but it's a three-step visualization process in which step one, we generate the signal based on a surrounding environment. So the mini camera then captures the image of the environment as a video stream and sends it to the pocket computer. The pocket computer then transforms the image into a stimulation signal using our proprietary algorithms and then sends those signals back to the glasses. The glasses then project via laser a pattern at the back of the eye based on the signal received from the image analysis system, and that light or laser stimulates specific cells on the subretinal implant, which then the subretinal implant converts the signal into some retinal stimulation. The stimulated implants use photovoltaic properties to transform energy received from the laser beam to an electric current and stimulation, and then the electric current stimulates the retina, leading to an optical nerve stimulation, sends then the signal through the optical nerve to the brain at the visual cortex, and then it interprets the stimulus. We are an evaluative implant image processing system. So basically what we're doing is we started, as I mentioned, with our first generation implant and system. We've then migrated to the clear glasses, and along our continuum of development, we hope to improve visual acuity. You can see the image on the left. That's what the patient sees with their bionic vision, at least our first generation system, this pixelated image of a face. And then as we improve the algorithms, we aspire to get ultimately an image that you see on the right. In our clinical development, we now have implanted 5 patients in France with our first generation system. We aim to show safety and efficacy at 6 months. All patients actually showed some elicited light stimulation from the implant when the system was on, and at 12 months, we continue to see progress. In addition, 3 of the 5 patients can read letters and sequence of letters. And remember, these patients have lost all central vision, so that it would be impossible for them to read a street sign or a metro stop sign. And so now we've, at least in 3 to 5 patients, we've demonstrated their ability to see letters and sequence of letters. I wouldn't say they're able to read, but certainly the ability to see letters we've shown. If you look at our clinical development overview, we have completed our 12-month follow-up in France. We are going to continue some feasibility work on the 5 patients we've already implanted in France with our Prima 2 system, the clear glasses, as well as begin our initial feasibility work in the US. 5 patients will be implanted and will be outfitted with the Prima 2 system. We then will move in the first half of 2020 to our pivotal study, hope to receive approval at 2022 and therefore be on the market sometime in 2023, in which we'll be the first retinal implant to have approval and go to sale. So in conclusion, we are a technology platform with a world-leading internal expertise and know-how. We're entering our last development stage with clear US and EU development path. Our clinical benefits that we've demonstrated in our first patient cohort in France have exceeded expectations, and this is clearing the roadmap for CE mark. We have no close competition in dry AMD, which is an initial addressable market of $1.5 billion, and we are funded through the first half of 2020. Thank you.